I think we need to just be prepared for the call. We need to make the call. We need to give them options, and then we have to document it.
What is the question when the client calls and says, is this thing covered? And you go, let's talk more about that.
We are the experts in our field for insurance, and we need to act like that. We need to think like that.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. We are here for another blog banter where we're having a fabulous time with Bobby and Therese. You are going to get all kinds of content from us because we are like three little musketeers here, changing the insurance landscape when Kelly's not available. So today we're going to talk about
wrong today.
She's even I'm just wearing flamingos on my polo shirt because I thought it was cute that they were blue with a tan background. And Therese is very tropical today as well with her floral print shirt. So today we are going to talk about lots of important things such as reducing E&O exposures in the agency through renewal reviews. So one of our large things that we recommend, and one of my favorite programs, is the renewal review program, where we come up with a strategy for the agency. We teach the team to reach out to everybody once a year, offer a renewal. We have a form that we go through that's very standardized and customized for the agency, to where everybody's asking the same questions. So we're getting the same information in the same format. I think it creates a great experience for the client. And it's that value add a lot of our clients are looking for right now. By doing the renewal reviews, it's giving us the chance to build a relationship with our customers, show that we have a value because we're not an 800 number. We're not an online. We are real live people that they get to talk to and ask their insurance questions to. But I think most importantly, it also helps us reduce E&O exposures. So what are some common things that we see at agencies, guys, for E&O claims? Or what do we see a lot of times that is missing or causing the claims at agencies?
Verifying information. You've got to, get your information verified. Address, phone numbers, drivers, vehicles. Sometimes vehicles aren't added. So you have to make sure that the policies are accurate. That's one of the first things. And the second thing I see is when we are requoting or rewriting policies, a lot of stuff is built in to a policy. And then when you're trying to rewrite it or requote it, you're missing all of those aspects. And that will cause an E&O if they have an accident or something happens. They're like, oh, but my policy had this. And then it'll be researched and found that they did have it before. And when it was rewritten, it didn't get on there. And that is a huge E&O issue.
How about you, Bobby?
Yeah, I think just discovering missing items, and it doesn't even, it's mitigating that, before it ever happens. And once the E&O happens, it's a little too late, right? Because hindsight is always 20/20. I have an agency that I worked with recently where they have a carrier who's actually trying to go back and collect a claim payment back from a client. They've already made the claim payment, went back and audited the file, realized the building was not on the policy, and are now trying to get the claim payment back that they've already paid to the client. I don't think they're going to be that successful, but I'm following this one pretty closely. Thought it rather interesting. It was about a $35,000 claim.
Wow.
I love, one of the things I see a lot is like missed buildings, kind of like Bobby said, or jewelry and personal lines, commercial as equipment. I had a contractor who left their sole swears up and down. They called the agency to add a tractor onto a policy, which we wouldn't have added because it was for his personal use, but he said it was for business. And we would have, if we would have had any conversation with them, we would have asked for bill of sale or how was it registered or, whose name was it in, so we could have insured it properly. And ended up getting stolen. And there was no coverage. And he's like, well, I called the agency. And we're like, well, none of our records show you did. And it was kind of a he said, she said, where it ended up that It didn't have to go to, the client was probably like, well, I thought I did. And we were able to smooth it over, but that's not always the case.
Well, and to your point earlier, Stephen, like it's all about consistency, right? If our agency can operate consistently and we can prove to a judge that we operate consistently, normally those judgments are going to fall onto the agent's side. But we have to have a process. We have to have a plan, and we have to be documenting the system and continuing to operate consistently. We can't do one for one and not for another.
And
I have two other ones that are huge. Condos and dwelling fires.
Mm-hmm.
Because those two policies are so complicated when it comes to additions and alterations and understanding studs in. That one is humongous because some carriers cover studs in, some of them don't. And then with dwelling fires, the inflation guard can change everything. And sometimes the inflation guard was too high and threw the dwelling coverage way high. And sometimes it was too low.
My favorite thing is like during an E&O, like if you have an E&O claim at your agency, one of the first things they advise is don't change any processes or procedures till this is settled. Like you have to keep doing business as was, otherwise you might be admitting fault. So for all y'all out there listening, start renewal reviews now, not after a loss happens, right? Like let's just get started now. Give us a call. We're here to help you. But what we want to really look at is reviewing a lot of those standardized items. I think in personal lines, scheduled property, a lot of times it's missed. I've seen a lot of times in agencies where we rewrite a policy, we save $300, client's happy until their diamond tennis bracelet is lost and or mysteriously disappears, and we never put it on the news schedule, and that's why we saved $300. So that $300 now just cost $10,000 in a claim. And a lot of policies will also tell you you can't just settle it because you think it's okay. You have to still get their advice and or buy-in.
Well, and that sometimes is a red flag, that huge amount. If you're paying attention, that $300, when you see that, you need to, I'm not just saving the money. You need to look through and be like, oh my gosh, there's $300. Did I miss something?
So I think the first part is really just making sure that we have a structure to follow with the renewal reviews, making sure it's a consistent experience for every client, whether you send out a email through automation that every client once a year gets, or whether you call every single client, whatever that looks like. I think it just needs to be consistent across the board for all lines. And some agents are like, there's just no way we can call every single person every year. And I'm like, well, I felt that way before too. And we did it and we struggled through the beginning until we crushed it. And now clients love it. Or something better than nothing. Send an automated email giving them the option to reach out for a review or schedule a review. Right. And if they say, yes, they want one, then we honor that and we do a review. But then when it comes to the review, it has to be consistent in the way we're doing it and what we're reviewing and how we're reviewing it. And that's really where our plan comes into effect. It walks you through all the talking points of personal, commercial, whatever it may be, to make sure that the client's getting a consistent experience. We're comfortable with asking the same questions in the same way. And we're uncovering some of those random things that are most commonly missed. Some of the things I also see in agencies is we'll have like a classic auto policy that has one auto limit and the primary auto has a different limit. Or they have toys insured with another agent, but we have an umbrella and maybe not all the toys are listed correctly on the umbrella. Or the umbrella doesn't do that particular line and excludes it, but we didn't make that clear to the insured in writing with a signature that there was no coverage for the additional exposure under the umbrella.
Or I'm going to think of a crazy thought here that our insured is just living their life and they don't know that they need to add something onto their policy. They have no clue, right? And it's our job, our ethical job as an agent to reach out and make sure that we know what is my client's exposure. because they're not going to call us the day after Christmas to go, look at this beautiful fancy ring my husband just bought me, and here's the receipt.
That's
So
just insurance though. It's like, this is not coming out of the house until I've called my agent and put it on my policy. They get confirmation in writing that it's been added.
Well, and we also have to take into consideration that policies change. In North Carolina, the umbrella policy, it used to carry uninsured and underinsured motorists on it, and then they took it off. So when they took it off, obviously the umbrella price changed, but then you had to add something on to the actual auto policy if they wanted those increased limits. So that went on for a couple of years, and then I think they may have added it back on. So when you're, just writing a simple umbrella policy, the state may have changed something, or the carrier may have changed something about the policy, and you're not getting the same thing that you got when you had it before. So we just had to be really, really careful about, these different policies and reviewing them and paying attention. And if we review our clients' policies, we would notice that the additions and alterations on a condo policy aren't good enough. They aren't high enough to rebuild the interior of that condo. Or we'd notice that the dwelling coverage, that some have replacement costs, some don't, but that the dwelling coverage was either way too low or way too high. Now, we had a client who rented her home out, so she made that a dwelling fire policy in the state of North Carolina. Then she moved back into it. But dwelling fire policies have very different coverage than homeowners policies, and she never notified the insurance company that she resided there, never got a homeowners policy, and had a claim. And the claim wasn't covered because it wasn't covered on a dwelling fire. It would have been covered on a homeowners policy. And if we were reviewing those policies, we would have figured out that she was living there, and we would have corrected that. So you can find so many things that would prevent E&O issues that we're not finding when we don't do renewal reviews.
I think a lot of times people are afraid to ask, right? Because my client's going to tell me no. But guess what? My job is to point out that you have the spinach in your teeth. And then for you to say, well, I'd like to continue to walk around that way. And then that's your choice, right? But at least I've done the kind part. I've done the good thing, and I've pointed that thing out. And now it's the client's choice to say yes or no, I want that thing. And then our job is to just document that information to protect our agency.
I think it's also better to be proactive versus reactive when it comes to a renewal. And I was talking to an agency the other day, and they're like, we've been doing this program for 2.5, like they've been doing it 3 years now, I think almost. Like they're in their rhythm. It's happening consistently. Like, but now we're getting the customers that call like 2 months after the renewal that are like, why'd my rate go up? I'm like, okay, so did we just like literally stop and take a no drama llama breath? Like, no. Let me have a breath for a moment, recenter myself, and be like, thank you so much for returning my call. Right? Like one of our things is we email every customer once a year and we call them. One call, one email, one and done. Thank you so much for finally returning my call so we can address this. And they're like, oh, I forgot about that part. Like they were becoming really reactionary because they were like, but the review time is over. I'm like, no, you can review the account anytime. We can do a review anytime. It doesn't have to be at a renewal. We just choose the renewal because it makes it a little easier to remember when to do it. And because that's when it provides the most value to the client. But you can do it at any time. So take a step back, like take a breath. It'll be okay. And they're like, okay.
And I've been in
it's a lot more complicated, right? That it really needs to be a lot of times. Like, I have to keep calling until I get this client on the phone.
One time.
And they get, into this cycle. Like, if I don't talk to this client, then I didn't properly do a renewal review. Like Steven said, take a breath, right? No drama. We're going to call. We're going to say, hey. We're going to email. We're going to say, hey, and then we're going to close the file and let the client do what the client is going to do. Because what do we always say? We can't care more about their insurance than they do.
Right.
When I've been in some agencies that actually don't do it at renewal because they have that don't poke the sleeping bear concept. So if you're worried about poking the bear, don't do it at renewal. Do it midterm, but you're still reviewing the policy. and you're not alerting them to a renewal. You're just, hey, it's July and we call all the people with the last letter P in July. You can be more creative than just doing the actual renewal date. And like Steven says, it's helpful to use the renewal date because then you have a time span. But if you want to do it differently, you can do it differently. You're just doing those calls to make sure your policies in your agency are accurate.
And can we all agree that when we're making proactive calls, we're more prepared and we can guide the conversation and get the information
we'll have
we
more
need?
Control.
Right. And we're more confident because we now know what we're doing. We might not like
100%.
making the call necessarily, but once we get going, we're fine. And I think that really comes to like, what does the process look like? And it's preparing. We have to prepare. We have to prepare mentally, physically. We have to get ready. We can't just go run a marathon on day one, but we have to prepare for the call. We need to gather the relevant policy information in a centralized area. We need to familiarize ourselves with the client's history, looking for things that might have changed the rate or changes to the policy. Like Therese said, did a contract change or policy coverages change? What's going on with the carrier and the market? And then I think we just need to pick up the phone and make the call. Bless all of our souls, right? Like dealing with another agency and they're like, but we keep uncovering all of these things, like missing drivers or an outbuilding or whatever. They had purchased another agency and they're in their first year of reviews with this new book of business. And they're like, and it's taking time and blah, 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 and having to explain to clients their other policy wasn't correct. And I'm like, hey. And so I got the owner and I'm like, hey, are you upset with how long the renewal reviews are taking? He's like, no. I'm like, are you upset that we're uncovering all these little things now? He's like, no. And I'm like, so what advice do you have for the team? He's like, we're building value and trust in a new book of business to the agency. They forgot we've done this with our book. Like we found all those little skeletons for the most part that we could find and we fixed them. He's like, guys, I'd rather we find them and fix them now than have a claim and not have coverage and have to try to deal with it after. So we just need to keep making the calls and clients are going to find value in this. You get the couple cranky ones, but we have to remember that overall, it's for the benefit of the client and it could be the best call they have of the year, right? More often than not, we add rental car to a vehicle or fix the coverage. And several months later, there's a claim that's now covered or they have a coverage they didn't have before. The client calls back and is like, thank you so much. Had you not have called me, I wouldn't have known that I was missing this coverage. Versus the opposite, which is you people and not having correct coverage and all the chaos that ensues with that. I think we need to just be prepared for the call. We need to make the call. We need to give them options, and then we have to document it. We have to make sure that we're clear and concise in what the conversation was between both parties and making sure that we're taking care of that. So what other advice do we have for uncovering E&O exposures or getting to know our clients better during a renewal review?
Just establishing that rapport and making it human. It doesn't have to be so technical all the time. Don't just read from the sheet. Be your client's friend. Find out what's going on in their life because that's how you're going to uncover the most information. When they start talking, people love to talk about themselves. They love to talk about the things that they've acquired or the things that they've accomplished. And so by opening up those lines of communication, you may discover things that are not even on your sheet about your client. And that's how you're going to determine, do they need life insurance coverage that we can recommend to them? Do they need other lines that we may not even be reviewing right now? Do they have referrals for us that they can send over? So we need to be establishing that rapport because that's how we're going to discover really what's going on in their life.
Did they start a home-based business during COVID they forgot to tell anybody about? And now they're making $20,000 a year and voiding most of their homeowner's policy and have no coverage for their business asset.
I've discovered the most information in my career just simply by asking the question, right? Like, what is the question when the client calls and says, is this thing covered? And you go, Let's talk more about that.
And I think as licensed insurance agents, we are the experts in our field for insurance, and we need to act like that. We need to think like that. And one of the things I said yesterday in a training, and I had forgotten about it, is if the doctor recommends something for my child, I say to them, if this was your child, what would you do? So if this was your insurance, what would you do? Now, don't make assumptions on making and choosing the options for the client. You have to give them those options. But you definitely need to say, okay, if this was my policy, this is what I would do to influence them and educate them on why they need the coverage that you are recommending to them. So we need to definitely use that, pay attention. And if there is a mistake on the policy, we need to be honest and say, this policy was not correct. There's something missing here. And I'm glad we found it and we're going to fix it.
Yeah. And I think that that's really, we're building value in ourselves as independent agents. We're building value in the service we provide. We are not an order taker. We are not the touch screen at McDonald's that you now get to order from and make all your own choices in life, right? Those markets are out there. Again, the 800 numbers are out there. The direct dial, the online, buy it yourself is out there. But that's not where the value comes in. The automated phone system is not going to reach out and be like, it is time for your insurance review. Have you had any changes? That is our job as agents, and where we really provide value. And that's what customers are looking for as costs are changing and the marketplace is changing. It's becoming tougher and they have less options. They're going to look more to value and service over just price. And it's our job to help uncover their needs, uncover what might be missing from their current policies, and at least make them aware of what it is. It's called building relationships. So make sure you check us out online, guys, agencyperformancepartners.com. If you or your team is struggling with renewals or renewal reviews or retention, give us a shout. We are happy to do a call and see if we're a good fit for your agency. We also have online options. So if you're a self-starter and want to do it all yourself, check out our agency school. And we look forward to talking to you on our next call. Thanks, guys.
Happy calling.